Today's episode is a little different. Instead of sitting in the interviews chair on Emerging Tech Unpacked, I'm crossing the microphone to share my own career story in full with you. You're about to hear my journey, not just as an award-winning innovation leader and founder, but as a 6-year-old migrant, landing in Australia, a young teacher, learning to run classrooms in Japan, a global professional navigating London law firms and Canadian winters, and ultimately an entrepreneur building a business and portfolio career from scratch. In this conversation, I open up about resilience, risk-taking and reinvention, from redundancy to entrepreneurship, from feeling isolated to intentionally building community, and from corporate innovation roles to designing programs that help diverse founders and women step into their own ventures. You'll also hear my love for communication, teaching, and emerging technology. Now it comes together my work at Forrestlyn and here on the Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast, where I simplify complex science and tech so more people can access opportunities of the future. Whether you're a founder, an aspiring leader, or standing at the crossroads in your own career, I hope my story is an invitation to follow your curiosity, back your adaptability, and design a life that aligns with your values. Thanks to Kirsty from the Leadership Odyssey podcast for the great conversation. My name is Lucy Lin, and this is my Leadership Odyssey.
Today's guest didn't follow a straight line. She followed her curiosity, and that choice shaped everything that came next. Lucy Lin is an award-winning innovation leader, founder, and podcast host working at the intersection of emerging technology, education, and inclusion. She is the founder of Forestlyn, a consultancy helping innovation and tech-led organizations communicate with clarity and credibility. She is also the creator and host of Emerging Tech Unpacked, a podcast built to cut through jargon, challenge myths, and spotlight the women shaping the future of STEM. Lucy's work spans startups, corporates, universities, and national tech bodies. She serves as Vice Chair of the Australian Computer Society New South Wales and was the Impact Entrepreneur in Residence at Western Sydney University, where she built real pathways for diverse founders and future leaders. Her career spans more than 2 decades across 5 countries, from global brands to early-stage ventures, grounded in clarity, ethics, and access. In 2025, she was recognised as the Women of Western Sydney STEM Award winner by Western Sydney University. She is also the recipient of the Influence and Innovation Award from the Australian-China Alumni Association in Beijing, recognising her impact in innovation leadership, not for commentary, for contribution. This conversation is Lucy's Odyssey. The decisions that shaped her path, the lessons learned along the way, and what it takes to build a meaningful global career without losing yourself. Lucy Lin, welcome to Leadership Odysseys.
Hi, Kirsty. Nice to be here.
So wonderful to have you. I think we met, probably about 12 or 18 months ago. The last year went very quickly, and I have loved learning all about the world that you live in tech, and all the incredible things that you are bringing to women in this space as well. So I'm very excited to dive into your journey. So we're going to dive right in, and I want you to take us back to where it all began. Who is Lucy Lin, and how has your journey unfolded?
Yeah, well, I'd say my journey started as a 6-year-old when I got on the plane from Taipei, Taiwan to Australia. I got on the plane with a big red kangaroo, if you know which one that is.
Love that. Qantas will love that too.
Funny, I actually work at Qantas too.
Excellent.
And yeah, it started as a young migrant coming from overseas to Australia. And we first lived in Adelaide. And Adelaide was great. It was the late 80s, I have to say. So nothing opened past 6 o'clock. And it was like a bit of a ghost town. And when you come from kind of like a very late city like Taipei, when, you know, the night markets will go on, you know, people will start leaving the house at about 9, 10 o'clock, and then you don't go home until about 2, 3 in the morning, which is also why I'm a night person.
And then you come to Adelaide and oh, there's nothing open past the like, a bit of a swap in the change.
I can relate to some degree. My husband, so he was born overseas as well, and definitely that kind of European mindset where the night is actually the prominent part of the day. And so it was a big shift for his family when they came over to Australia as well. And I can only imagine what that would have felt like. a huge shift in the way that you live.
Yeah, it was very different. And then we're like, oh, it's a bit too quiet for us. And then we got on, but Dad packed us in a car after, almost a year. And then we drove to Sydney via Madeira and we settled in Western Sydney. So I'm a Parramatta girl. I grew up in the Western suburbs. People who don't know the Western suburbs of Sydney, it's very multicultural, it's diverse, which is also why I think my dad wanted to move into this region. And yeah, also had the biggest Westfield because, Taiwanese love to shop. Remember losing our car once. It's like that episode in Seinfeld. We just don't know where we parked it.
Oh, it is a huge shopping centre. And the car park there's just endless amount of entries and exits and everything else. I spent many years in the retail landscape going out to Parramatta, especially in the peak of the high trade moments where it's just so many people and cars.
Yeah.
You have to tell me why, what was the big decision for your family to move here to Australia?
To move to Australia was my parents' choice. I was 6 when it happened. But, we wanted different opportunities. I think living in Asia, it's very competitive and it's very hardworking as well. But then we had the opportunity. I came middle class. I guess I was in Taiwan, and then we had the opportunity to immigrate to Australia. And they wanted a change. They were in their 30s when they came over. And I think when you are in your 30s and you have the monetary ability to move, they wanted a change for their kids. Probably good because, I could see my cousins and they had to, go to after school care and study a lot more harder. And I feel like it was slightly easier in Australia, but the lifestyle is also better here, I think. So I love Asia, and I think, I'm always considering going back and living there again. It is very different to the lifestyle here. And, they're people, my parents were adventurous and they wanted a bit of a change. And I understand that because I'm also a person who's embracing change all the time.
Wow, what a pivotal moment, though, for that transition. As you said, just even the way that you're going through your school years and meeting different people, the lifestyle changes. What was it like settling in the western suburbs of Sydney?
It was hard, actually, because, when you don't have networks, you don't know the language as well. We came here with very limited language skills. It's not easy when you don't know anyone and you have to come in and really set yourself up. And hard for my parents when they're in their 30s. Probably easier for me as a 60-year-old, So it's still great that I remember going to primary school first day and I'm like, can't understand what anyone is saying. That's always difficult. So, yeah, in terms of that, I think it's always very hard in terms of moving to a new country. Probably harder as an adult, but still hard as a child as well doing that. But, I remember going to school and sort of, having all the Taiwanese fried chicken and, fried rice and, all that. I've turned it into eating, I think my favorite was spaghetti sandwiches. It's so I do also love. And simply growing up in Australia and the diet was so different too.
Yeah, wow. What a great start, though, and probably a key part, especially learning the language and knowing that there's that barrier there in meeting and just being able to talk with other children in the playground, a level of resilience that you would have learnt so early on in your life to be able to go through that.
Yeah, and I feel like, coming from overseas as a 6-year-old, and I do think that, a lot of your life is kind of set up as you're growing up. And certainly because I had a major shift in my life at 6, the resilience, the adaptability, and the cross-cultural communications, needing to learn a second language in English, all of this has carried me on with my career further down.
And can you now speak multiple languages?
Yeah. I can speak, English, Mandarin, and I understand Taiwanese Hokkien as well.
What a great skill to carry through, especially in the world of your career journey, which we're about to embark on. But that, I'm sure, has been an incredible benefit to help go through that part of your life as well.
Yeah, and I do think, whatever people say, I do think having multiple languages, I know AI is able to help you these days with translation. It's always good when you can have different parts of your brain ticking along and thinking about different languages. And I do think that's actually quite important. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's the one thing I wish I did have, was picking up another language. My husband's very good at it. He speaks 3 languages pretty much fluently, and he's been using Duolingo as learning a 4th language for the last 2 years, and he loves it. And it's down into bite-sized pieces. It is something everyone can do in this day and age. It's so much easier.
Yeah. I keep thinking I want to pick up Spanish. Hasn't happened yet, but I think when I get more time, I definitely would like to do that too.
Or maybe that can be a future goal. So your primary years, you've dived right in here into Australia, going through. What was the next part of your odyssey?
I would say studying at UTS, after high school, I was deciding what I wanted to do. And, by that stage, I went to primary school here, high school here. And, at 17, 18, you're not quite sure what you wanted to study for the rest of your life.
You're absolutely not sure at that age. I wouldn't believe there would be a very small percentage of people that would understand exactly what they want to do at that point in their life.
And decided to go very broad. I decided to do communications at the University of Technology in Sydney, UTS. Because I thought, well, you know what? Everybody needs good communications. Everybody needs to communicate. I might as well be very good at it, So that's what I studied. And when I was about to graduate, I went to the careers fair at my university, and I was looking around for the goals of, what's my goal after university. And, I went to all the consultancy and the, big other huge companies. And then, and they go, what degree do you have? And I said, I got a communications degree. And funny that nobody wanted to hire me. So
it was probably a bit too early on in the piece. It wasn't as prominent back then, but oh my gosh, it's prominent now.
You're like, unless you have a business degree, accounting degree, engineering degree, we don't really need you. But then I did see a little store, and it was like, go teach English in Japan. And then I was thinking, oh my God, that sounds really cool. And I was like, what degree do you need? Because I was rejected from all the other ones. And they said, any degree is okay. And I said, I've got a communications degree. And they said, perfect, because teaching is all about communication. So I went through, I got hired in Sydney, and we went through like multiple group exams, etc. And basically, actually after that careers there, I went back and I was on the internet. This was, early 2000s, and it's like the dial-up internet, and then, website was like loading quite slowly. And then I said to my mum, I want to go teach English in Japan. And she freaked out. She's like, oh my God, you're going to get taken by the Yakuza, which is like the Japanese mafia. Is this a scam?
Wow.
She was looking out for me. I was a 21-year-old, at that time.
100%. So. I would be exactly the same as a parent, but I was actually going to ask you about your parents, because there must be something in there, like you're giving things a go. You're not overthinking things by the sounds of it, and you're looking at the different opportunities that are out there in life and willing to give them a go at such a young age. Did that come from your parents, do you think? The kind of bit of a risk taker?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they moved countries in their 30s. So, I think naturally they're risk takers too. And potentially that's what I got from them, is to be that risk taker and to be adventurous and to give everything a bit of a chance. And I love to try things once, and I love to keep learning. And, potentially that's also from my parents. I've never thought about that before, actually. But it probably is right. It's funny because when I was, and then I started to make my own choices, and I said, I wanted to take this risk, and now I want to move overseas and do this. And then they turned around going, oh my God, you shouldn't be doing that. It's too hard, It's so funny, right? Because they probably got the same thing when they were moving overseas themselves from their parents.
Absolutely. That's right. But it sounds like they're very nurturing in giving you the space to think freely and to look at these opportunities. And yes, you've got to mitigate risk, but also look at, well, what if? What if this all works, and the experience and the life skills and the pure joy that you could have from these different experiences.
Yeah. And I think, whether or not I think I got their full support, I think I've also made up my mind I was going to do it. Because I feel like I'm also a fairly strong person too. And I did my research, and I said to them that this is what I was going to do. And they were apprehensive at the beginning, but I did get the job, and I did go over to Japan for 2 years. And they did come and visit me, and they were, they came into my classroom, and I thought, what a scam. We're not kidnapped by Japanese mafias, and they were very proud, after that. So.
Wow. Well, 2 years heading over in Japan, you're set up, you're quite young. Did you say you're 21 when you moved over to Japan? How was that in terms of, well, you would have moved out of home, obviously, in transitioning to a whole new country, different language, having to build a whole new community around you?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's the second time I've done that because, I was 6 when that first happened. And then now as a 21-year-old, moved to a completely different country again. I Japanese up until I was in grade 10, year 10. And, but, definitely nowhere near fluent. And then I had to, study when I was there as well. And it was difficult. Like, I actually was at home during my university days, and I had to frequently call back my parents. I'm like, how do I use a washing machine? Because I never had to do that. and everyone was Japanese, and this is before, AI and scanning your phone, and you had to get out the dictionary and see what symbols were, and, things like that. So it wasn't easy. This is like over 2 years ago now, but I loved it. I loved being a teacher. I love being an educator, and I loved living in Japan. Like, it was really interesting. I guess that's why I also love technology, because I was seeing robots there, over 20 years ago, and I think naturally I've always been kind of like a teacher type because my first job was a teacher.
Yeah. And so going into teaching, what was that experience like? Like, did you go, this is, I found myself, like, this is what I really do want to do? Or was it, okay, how do I, take on this opportunity? Like, did it make sense when you kind of stepped into it all?
Yeah, it was new because I was a student and then I turned into a teacher, right? And I went from studying university and then being a teacher, and I learned pretty quickly. Like, I think that's one thing that I'm quite good at, is that I am a fast learner and I'm very adaptable. And, I was reading a lot of books about what teachers should do, and they gave you actually, when you get hired for teaching roles, they give you 1 week, like 1 week you're in the classroom with other newly recruited teachers, and now they're like my lifelong friends. I still know them very well, and you go traveling together with them. And then after this 1 week period, when they teach you how to be a teacher very quickly, then you go to your respective cities. And I was in Niigata, and I've got friends in like Yokohama and Okayama and Kanazawa and things like that. And then you just start in the classroom, and then you start interacting with your students, and just just have to learn very quickly. And I love like thinking of different games to try and get my students. Well, mainly students. I had school age students, and we played lots of games in terms of how you learn English, and I think that's also where I learned my cross-cultural communication. When you're teaching English as a second language, you have to really slow down your pace. You have to use simple language. You avoid jargon. You adjust your tone. You separate questions so people can follow very easily. And I think that's also how I communicate now, is because I was a teacher in Japan and teaching English as a second language. And I think also as a teacher, I've always tried to provide a very psychologically safe space for my students, whether they are school-age students or adults, perhaps adults as well. And if they're making mistakes, I think that's fantastic because they get to practice their mistakes and then they become more confident, especially when you're, speaking a new language and you're just like, oh, I don't know if I want to try that. But my classroom was a place where you can do that. And that's how I also think of myself as a leader as well in terms of, that psychologically safe space for, students, teams, etc.
Sounds like you had a lot of self-awareness in regards to culture, diversity, communication, even if you didn't know that at the time, but looking back and going through and just reflecting on that journey, it definitely sounds like you had a lot of your own self-awareness in there to be able to provide that environment for the students and your peers around you as well.
Yeah, I certainly didn't know that between 21 to 23 years old, but now looking back, I think that also really set me up for my career to come.
Yeah, well, what a great foundation to start your career, not only with having a communications degree behind you, but 2 years of experience of living out of home at a young age as well, so that you could find yourself and realize, how to juggle the real world of life, the life skills sitting in there, but also learning a language and being able to teach others in that space. But as said, that self-awareness of the beginning stage of, your leadership journey as well.
Yeah.
And so 2 years, was it back to Australia after 2 years?
No, it was directly to the UK because I had friends who did the 2 years of their grad roles and then they all moved over to the UK as you do, like a lot of with Australians, so a lot of Australians do that. And I was like, I was a teacher in Japan, and then I was like, what job am I going to get next? And I think I was just very lucky that a friend of mine was already working in what they call a magic circle law firm. So pretty much it's like one of the top 5 law firms in London. And I got a job via her. And it really got me thinking about, how networking and getting jobs and things like that. But that role was really cool because I was project managing how we can get onto the company intranet. So I was working for a very large law firm, Linklaters, and it was at the time where, everything there was on manual files. Massive law firms, everything was in manual folders and files. And then it was when, my job was to project manage that to get onto the internet, working with, the tech teams, the internet teams, the knowledge management teams, and putting all that on online, basically. So then that knowledge could be spread into the 27 offices around the world that they had. And it was really cool. I got to work with lots of lawyers, got to be in that environment, and made me realize I never want to be in because when you work in a very large magic circle law firm, it's very prestigious. Everyone around me was they came from Cambridge, Oxford, Yale, Harvard, etc., all very smart. They were all my friends because we were about 23 years old, and they were working to the bone because they were at the very bottom. And you see them and I'm like, and actually one of my friends was like, we worked so much that she was getting paid less than a McDonald's worker.
Oh, go for that. It is so true in so many of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and she couldn't go. And I was like, what do you mean? Let's go to Greece and Turkey. And she couldn't go because work had to prioritize. And I was like, it's a bit sad.
Oh, it's so hard. Oh, I'm going to ask, seeing as, I'm sure they're still in your network today, whether it's, through LinkedIn or still close connection, but how did a lot of them stay within their career journeys, do you think? Or was, because there's so many people in that space of that legal and that really intense consultancy, you get like a decade in and it's just that burnout from the amount of hours that they've dedicated to it.
Yeah, that's right. And I know a lot of people who've come from that space, and a lot of them most of them pretty much aren't working in that. I know one of them's completely pivoted into kind of like this meditation type realm because he's completely burnt out. And which makes sense because, they have amazing perks. I went to lots of black tie parties and drinks trolleys that would come out at, 4:30 on a Friday. And there's this one time where I know somebody was wheeling out their luggage because they wheeled in their luggage on a Monday morning and then were finally wheeling out on Friday afternoon because, you've got food your food and your drink were all was subsidized, much cheaper. They've got sleeping pods at the office. Like, why would you leave, right? When you're working on big cases. So it also taught me that, work-life balance, I think, is important to me. And Yeah. And that is something I will also think about as well, besides, uh, also getting the job. Like, I was very lucky getting the job via a network of mine, which I think is also a good way of introducing myself into the UK.
What a great environment for you to be a mentee as well, even if it is just listening and learning and looking at that whole entire culture that is happening around you. I think that is a key point to pull out. Like, you weren't heading down that path of going into a legal career, but what an incredible experience that would have taught you to be around, as you said, so many skilled professionals, but also to understand the environment that they're actually in and their ways of working, the level of project management and admin that goes behind it, and, what is actually required within a very different industry.
Yeah. And it also made me realize, like, after that, I actually did work very hard because, like, naturally, I think I am fairly ambitious and I do, I'm a hard worker. But it's like later on, then you go, you're looking back at that period now and you go, I think when they are at the end of their lives, they're not thinking how hard they've worked. They think about the relationship around them and the things that they've done and the impact that they have and the legacy. So it's kind of like, reflecting back was quite interesting. And like, well, you're also thinking about different aspects, like different periods of your life. And then, clearly that was a different period of my life too.
So how many years were you there for?
I was there for 2 years and I've had a great time. I think I did about 18 countries in Europe, and so we did a travel around London with the Eurostar and the cheap flights. And I'm a bit of a country counter. I love to count countries. And I'm up to 53 countries now.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. Yeah. So travel's got to be part of your whole way through by the sounds of it. You are really embracing the journey with getting that balance in there. Work hard, but play hard and enjoy the travel. What a great, I suppose, point to be able to position yourself, though, to be able to do all that travel in your downtime from work. I'm sure that opened you up to being able to explore the local cultures, the food, the communities, everything around you.
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely love travel. I think it's such a way of you can open your mind, get immersed in other countries and other cultures, see how other people work, be able to communicate with them. There's so many great skills I think you get from traveling. And my favorite type of traveling is, the cultural type. I can't really sit on the beach for too long. Like, it's not my type of holiday. I get a bit bored, a couple of days here and there. I can do that. But I love the ones where I'm actually learning and interacting local cultures, getting in there with the food and what they do and things like that.
I'm going to have to reach out to you after this episode. We're going to Italy later in this year. So I am very much looking for finding the little nooks that are out there so that we can really experience some great culture. So I'll be reaching out to you about that.
I love it, Lee. Let's chat.
So where did that take you from going from working there and having a great experience? What was next for you?
I came back to Australia after a couple of years in the UK and I worked at a big financial company, AMP, and I worked in an internal innovation role because I think I was, pivoting from that very innovation technology. I was in Japan with all the robots, and then I was doing project management with all the digital innovation, and then I moved into a role creating new products pretty much. And we were there to develop new financial products. It felt like a corporate startup and, inside a very large ASX listed organization. And, all the people there, I was employee number 5 in this little, kind of like a little startup. We didn't even sit inside the big AMP towers. We actually had offices a few streets out, and we were in our own little startup group. I was employee number 5. And by the time I left 4 years later, we grew up to 50 people. So we were really like a startup environment.
It is sounding very much like a startup, but how nice to be part of a startup that's also got the, I suppose, the sustainability of the company structure that's sitting beside it and there to be able to have as that resource to outreach to as well.
It was great because, we were developing new products. We were hiring all different skill sets, marketing comms like myself, and then others, in IT. We've got customer service, we have product people, we have finance people, we had all these different sites. It really was like a startup, but it was even better because it was funded. So I didn't have to be on struggle street.
I love that. You know what I'm loving as we go through your odyssey is a big part of you trust the process.
I do.
You allow the next step to evolve. You couldn't have mapped out your career journey even to this stage, like if you tried at the very beginning.
I'm very much of a person like, well, I follow my passions. I've kind of, and a lot of it I do think is luck as well, like right time, right place. I really do believe in that. If I didn't come back at, when I did in the UK, will I ever be in this position? If I never went to that careers fair, will I ever have gone to Japan? Probably not. Like, probably be in a graduate role and be boring like everyone else. And being in that small environment was really good as well because, everyone was quite senior. I was about 25 at the time. Everyone was very, very senior. Everyone had a master's. It got me. I then started my master's as well because everyone else had one. I had to get one. So I did a Master of Commerce, majoring in marketing and strategic management from the University of Sydney. And then we completed that. That was one of the hardest things I did, studying part-time, working full-time.
Oh
my God, it's hard.
I take my hat off to you and anyone else that's doing that. I remember there was a stage where I had young children. I was studying HR as well and working full-time and commuting. Oh my gosh, it was just your headspace. That's what it is. It's just a level of headspace and your energy that is just an extreme conflict of interest to each other.
I know. So hard.
So I take my hat off to you. Well done.
Yeah. And because after you finish work, you've got to go to, group meetings and you got to go to classes, and then the weekends you got to do your readings and you got to, do your assignments. It's not easy. And then you get your family, to look out for and, everything else. So it's not easy. And yeah, like when I finished my master's and I graduated, was, I have to say, one of the happiest days of my life. Not sure if I want to go back and do a PhD. I don't think I do.
It's a celebration because you put your future self, first. And what a moment to celebrate knowing that you've been able to complete that and the value it's brought you personally and professionally, probably.
Oh, it solidifies that, right? So it solidifies the credibility because, I still think back at, well, I've got a communications degree. What about a business or commerce degree? And then now I've got it, So I guess you always kind of look back and you go, oh, maybe that's why I did it as well, So I kind of been strategically lucky, I think, as well. So and you do plan for kind of your career, but I think you have to pull off at the right time as well. So the master's, whilst I think is kind of valued in Australia, I do think it's more valued overseas. So my next move was back overseas, and I was working at American Express at the time in a loyalty role. And then I moved over and I did a strategic partnerships role in Canada. So I lived in Toronto for 3 years. And I really enjoyed that because it was another continent, my fifth country. And I got to ski very well because it's 6 months of winter in Canada.
I was say, it also sounds like you enjoy the cold. You're going to a lot of destinations that have incredible winters.
Well, that Canada is by far the coldest. Japan was pretty cold too. But yeah, I mean, I think I enjoy the different variety of things. And I think that's just my life. I enjoy variety. I enjoy a change. I enjoy testing myself to see how I go. And I guess the thing is that I got quite good at skiing, and I got to experience the whole North America culture. I traveled around quite a bit in North America as well, been there for 3 years. And and I feel that, living now in 5 countries, 4 continents, back to that communication angle, Japan and Taiwan, so I was born in Taiwan, they're very high context cultures, meaning that, it's kind of like a very collectivist society as well. You've got to think about your tone, your pauses, what's being unsaid. Yes can mean I hear you, but it doesn't mean that I agree, but you kind of just nod your head because it's all about face and being polite and all of that. And then, you've got Australia, Canada, and England, where I also was, and it's very more low context cultures, so people expect you to be more clearer, explicit messaging, more direct, right? And stop being so vague and evasive and get to the point. And so I think having these two cultures, being born in Taiwan, raised born in a higher context culture and raised in a lower context culture, I'm always thinking about, do I dial it down? Do I lower it? In terms of my communications to be more clear, more human, but also noticing, the room as well.
That would have been a really incredible skill, though, to have. There's so many people that don't understand that shift, to have that level of awareness as you are going around. Respect, it comes with respect and integrity of being able to understand your environment and adapt to the different environments in more ways than just, a general conversation. As you said, it's really understanding the thoughts and the feelings and, the small assumptions that could come from different levels of communication.
Yeah, and I think because of that multicultural background, I grew up also in Western Sydney where there was a lot of diversity and multiculturalism. And, I think you kind of just have to be a little bit more aware. And because, I am a global citizen, that's what I call myself. And I do think that's how you can learn to be adaptable as well and be flexible. And I feel like that's probably my superpowers too.
It's a pretty good superpower to have going through life. So you're over in Canada, you're experiencing your fifth country of where you're living and having great experience. Where in the world were you off to next?
I think because after 3 years of Canada and, 6 months of winter, I got too cold and I was just, I missed the sunniness and the sunshine of Australia. And I feel like I'm a bit of a boomerang, always bouncing around and always kind of coming back to Australia. And then from there, I worked on Qantas, I worked at Here Technologies. And I guess the next chapter of my life, by then, I got faced, like I was in a regional role and I faced the redundancy, actually. There was a change of CEO, the change of the executive suite, and then from there, everything cascaded down. And I've never faced redundancy before. I always get to choose where I go to next.
So you've trusted the process, you've gone along, you've worked, can I just say, you have worked for some exceptional companies during this time, like really big brands across the globe that are out there as well. Like that is in itself of just, what you're learning and being able to provide in return for value and strategy and communication, everything around it. I mean, that's just huge. But yes, facing redundancy, I mean, I hate to say it, it's part of the corporate landscape in some way, shape or form for a lot of people at least one stage during their career journey these days.
Yeah. And I think more and more people are facing it, because economy keeps changing, AI keeps disrupting, I think it's probably going to get more and more. And I'm hoping that the stigma of redundancy will go. At the time when I was facing this, 8 years ago, it was very hard. It was a shock because you work so hard for a company. You're in a regional role, you're in midnight calls, and they still let you go. And you go, what else can you do? And I think one good thing of what happened there was I was placed into outplacement because I was an executive. When you're in outplacement, it's new to me. They give you a career coach. They help you with your CV. They help you with the interview skills. And, every week kind of go in with other people who's also being made redundant, other executives. And then everyone has to report how many interviews have they done or how many jobs they've applied for, all of that. And the career coach was saying to me, it was like, what role were you interested in? And basically, there wasn't anything that I was interested in. I guess I was still a bit raw coming in from this redundancy. And then it had some courses that they were offering as well to other people, career type courses. And the only thing I think that I was interested in was a 1-day course to learn about entrepreneurship. And back to my parents, my mum has always worked for herself. And my parents were business owners in Taiwan. And then, when they came to Australia, my dad got a job, but my mum has always worked for herself. And I was just like, well, why can't I give that a go, as well? And I do look at my parents and, you kind of always look at their path and go, well, maybe this is me as well. And even though my mum, again, told me not to go down entrepreneurship because it's too bloody hard. It's uncertainty, unstable, all that stuff. I don't listen to her clearly because I need to face my own mistakes too and get to learn. And most of the time, I had no idea what I was doing, but managed to set up an ABN, a business number, and then, started working for myself. And, by then I had 15 years of corporate marketing communications experience and started off just advising a lot of startups because that's also what I was interested in. I was in corporate and I wanted to come into the startup and helping because, I was in corporate startup innovation. So I was like, how do I do it in startup, and so I was working a lot with startups, but also academia and nonprofits, and that was really good. I had to come up with a name.
What a pivotal moment for you, though. And I'm going to go back. I could hear it in your voice. So before we move on to how you set this new business infrastructure up, I'm just going to ask, from your mindset perspective, how did you personally remove the interviews? And I'm going to now transition from corporate to entrepreneurship. What were you doing for yourself behind the scenes there? Because it sounds like it would have been a very interesting time in finding yourself and that path forward.
It was connecting with a lot of different connections that I didn't have. I think how I learn is always, I love learning from other people. So, a lot of maybe even, I think I did lots of coffee catch-ups and finding out how this works. I think, at the time, YouTube, I have to watch a lot of YouTube and social media. But I learned from other entrepreneurs who's done it before me, but it wasn't that many that I knew of for sure. Came from corporate, I came from overseas. I didn't really know anyone who had their own business or things like that. And it was difficult, I have to say. I think I stumbled around it for quite a number of years, in the wilderness going, what the hell am I doing? I'm kind of still going, what am I doing? But a little bit more comfortable now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, go into the beginning of this entrepreneurship journey, because it sounds like it was that fork in the road for you of setting this new path.
Yeah. And one of the things I also wanted to do was to set up a name, and that was meaningful. I think that was very important to me. So my company name is called Forestlyn, and that is actually derived from my Chinese name. So my last name is Lin, Lin, and in Mandarin that means woods or forest. And so pretty much Forrestlyn is kind of Lin, but with a Y, because I think it would be better for SEO and more unique, and and so that's how that's happened.
With the name, though, can you go into the name? I did a little bit of looking into the name from another conversation that you and I had. And it's quite interesting when you really go into the understanding of forest and then Lin, spelled Lyn, and how they really come together.
Yeah. So in Mandarin, if you break, there's a symbol. It's really hard to, there's a symbol like this, which means that means wood, basically, and that, it's like a tree. One of this is a tree. And if you have two of these, it means wood. And then if you have all three kind of here and here, that means forest. And so Mandarin is a character-based language. A lot of all their writing comes from, nature and what it looks like. And that's why it's a beautiful language, because a lot of all those symbols were kind of what it looks like, because, this looks like a tree, and that's why it means a tree, and when you put two of them together and you put all three of them together, one tree, two is wood, three is forest, so, and that's how that's happened. And again, I'm all about meaning, and I think it's very unique to me. Other people can have this name, but they don't have a name that means something in another language. I don't think it's as meaningful. So it's very much something that is mine.
And it represents growth. It represents, the interconnected kind of systems, which is very much your world as you're building, a whole new ecosystem and everything that you've been doing today. But what a beautiful name.
It's ecosystem, it's growing, it's growth, so.
Yeah. And then you got to make sense of all that complexity. So, which is I suppose the Lin part, right? More of that calmer kind of space that you get to have that reflection and bring it all together.
Yeah.
Well, what a special name. So that was the beginning of your entrepreneurship journey and the next chapter for your career.
Yeah. And, I think we touched on this, but I'm always about creating path for yourself. Like, because I don't think nobody works harder than you when you're working for yourself, I feel. It's the sweat, it's the grind, not knowing, when you're not sure where the next sale, the next client, the next paycheck. That's coming in. It's a completely different mentality, drumbeat, to anything else. And you have to want to do this because it's bloody hard work, So I feel that working for myself is probably the hardest job I've ever had. For sure.
Let's dive into that though, because it really is. And I think because there's a lot out there at the moment where people comparison, how they've got here, or saying all the positivity of entrepreneurship because your choice of time, all these different things. It's hard. There is a lot of heavy lifting that happens behind the scenes. There's a lot of hats that you're wearing. There's a lot of learning that is happening. There's a lot of operational tasks that never leave. And it very much comes without having the team that you've had especially through a corporate career. So the resources that are sitting there, lack of income as you're building as well, self-worth and, that level of knowledge. Like, what was that experience like for you?
Difficult. Like all those things. I think working for yourself and entrepreneurship has been glamorized, which, fine. But I think on the outside, it looks very shiny and it looks very glamorous and, it's, everyone's talking about it because if you do well, you can do very well. But most businesses fail, and it's also very hard. And because you're wearing not just many hats, you're wearing all the hats when you first start. And, you've got to do everything. The HR, the sales, the pay, the finances, the legal, everything, the tech, everything is you, and no team, no resources. And if you don't do it, it won't get done, which is also unlike a corporate job or any other job. If you don't do it, you don't get paid and you don't get done. So all of this is really hard. But I also, so I do think it's a very hard job that if you have the self-drive, and I think that's probably the key thing about entrepreneurship is you need to have self-drive. If you don't have self-drive, entrepreneurship isn't for you, because you need to do this self-driving thing to get anything done. And, if that's not you, I would suggest you get a job. But if you do have self-drive and you do want that flexibility to do it, then I think it's something that anyone and everyone should try if you are that type of person. And it's funny because, again, I've gone from doing it to then teaching it because my next, one of my clients ended up being Western Sydney Uni. They ended up getting a contract from the Department of Education. And what they wanted to do was to teach others how to become entrepreneurs. But not only that, teach women and multicultural people how to become entrepreneurs, And because if you look at startups, you look at entrepreneurship, it's very male. It's very Caucasian and white. It's very them. Even though I think the successful entrepreneurs are actually 40s and up because they're the ones with experience, money, resource, know how to do it, no problem to solve, and then they go into it. But, how the problem we were with that program was how do we get more women and how teach more women, but also teach more migrants, refugees, and multicultural people also to start their own businesses. And, like I said, Western Sydney is a very diverse region. And I have to say, it's probably one of my favorite roles to do. I did it for 2 years where I got to completely structure a new program about how we can teach skills to women and multicultural to get them to learn more about entrepreneurship. So I've gone from doing it to learning it, and teaching it.
Well, it sounds like a bit of a full circle moment, though, going right back to the beginning of your career. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I know you would say as well that you've gone on that moment of, starting out yourself in that space and then going on the journey to build your skill set, to consistently learn, to bring value. And then now you're back being able to be a teacher and really be that value add to others, to help them, to help them ask those hard questions and to navigate those steps into becoming their own leader, into setting up their own business to bring value to their communities around them.
And I, even though entrepreneurship is hard, I always think as well, why it's also good, especially for, say migrant women, is because it provides an extra income. It could be job creation, financially stable. All of these things is important. Like my mother, again, she only worked for herself because she didn't have the language, she didn't have the network. She's worked for herself as a daycarer, in our home. That's what she was doing for 20-something years. And also, women who are in domestic violence situations, it's their ability to get money and get out of their situation, So I think, if you have that self-drive, I think entrepreneurship could be a solution for you. And there are stats that there's a federal government initiative called Enterprise Me. They said that 64% of women in their 40s and 50s have a good idea for a new business, but the majority of them, at 78%, take no action. So I think a lot of people just don't know where to start. I was lucky, I guess, that I was, in outplacement. I had a one-day thing and then I had to go and do it myself. But, what I was going to do was to curate a program that would help these other people who were in that same situation as I were. But then what were the skills that they needed to know, and then to apply people who's done it already, like other entrepreneurs, to teach them how to do it. So that's what I was building for 2 years for Western Sydney Uni as a client, was to build in that program. And I loved it. Ran 13 different skills workshops. I invited 35 different diverse speakers. We had 1,500 registrations. It was held in 5 different locations in Western Sydney because, transport's balanced and you have to go to where people are. It's held online. We also distributed money out because one thing about entrepreneurship is that it's expensive to get started.
It is expensive.
Not everybody is a regional executive like myself who could take a year out or so to kind of lock the chops. And then, you've got to pay for lots of stuff. You pay for setting up your own business. You pay for your registration. You pay for insurance. You pay for, all these things. And so we actually distributed money out, $152,000. And, it went to community members and also went to students as well, because we wanted to make sure that local community and students were also supported. And, I've worked with lots of different people in the local ecosystem as well to build that very strong network of, from councils to women's groups to multicultural groups and internal academia teams, to make sure that this is something that everybody can support and deliver. And I do think it was quite successful as a result.
Oh, it sounds just rewarding in itself. It's heart-led work. And I think that in itself, of everything else that we're sitting in there, what a special moment for you, especially as, you're navigating your journey. But I think that's a big part of entrepreneurship too, is where you say yes and no to in the opportunities. And this sounds like the alignment was there completely.
Yeah, it really was, because, I do believe in it. I came from lived experience, doing it myself, and then struggling at the time, not knowing how to set myself up, and then to be able to teach others how to do it, I think was really, really good. And I know that, to bring more women and multicultural people into the ecosystem is also a good thing as well. I think you need to have more variety of people and founders and business owners and startup and side hustlers, And there's a quote from the Boston Consulting Group report. There's that boosting the number of female entrepreneurships to parity with men. We're just saying to parity will boost the Australian economy by an extra 71 to 35 billion dollars. And so, if we can encourage women in this space, diverse people, it would be smart economic.
Oh, huge. And even in the, when you look at the birth rates going down globally, all these different things, it's the ability to have that flexibility. It's not saying you're working less, it's the ability to have the flexibility for the home within that space too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's also women needs more flexibility. We do majority of the housework, a majority of the care working work. A lot of us have aging parents, and we also have to look after not just children, in addition to children. And it's difficult when you've got to juggle everything, juggle your life, juggle your career, and then, and also get opportunities, because we all know that once a women kind of like take a break, it's pretty hard to get back into the wheel, right? So how do you do that? And I do think that, if you start something for yourself, potentially this could be an avenue that you can consider as well to be able to do that.
Yeah, great to know that the level of support is out there for women. And we'll actually, if there's any links or anything you would want to share for anyone considering this path down the track as well of how to get that right support or outreach, let's put that in the show notes too. But this sounds like it was a part of your chapter that continued on to navigate into some great awards that you've won in innovation and also a podcast.
Yeah. Well, I actually got recognised for that, that program. So that program, unfortunately, has finished because the funding from Department of Education has run out. I'm hoping that there'll be more grants that would, kick it back, because I do feel it's important. But for my work, it was actually featured as a case study in a federal government decadal plan report for the future Female Entrepreneurship and Business Leadership Decadal Plan, 2024 to 2034. And I actually also got to meet the Governor General, Sam Mostyn, at Parliament House in Canberra.
What a moment.
Exciting. And it's always nice when you feel, recognised for what you've done. But yeah, it did get me thinking about, well, it's only one part because it's only Western Sydney, right? But how do I also scale knowledge and education and into other topics that I'm also excited and interested in? And always, once a teacher, always a teacher, I always say. And thanks for alluding to my podcast, because that theme has been in my head for about 2 years before I actually kicked it off. And the seed started when I was running the program as an entrepreneur in residence for Western Sydney. But I love podcasts. 500 million people have a podcast listeners. There's all different genres. I love listening to the history ones, the economic ones, the tech ones, the news ones. Not true crime, actually. I know a lot of others are.
I've actually been sent one for true crime. I had one of my mentors send it to me and said, you have to listen to this. And I've never really got into true crime, but I might give it a go this year. We'll see, because it does sound like it would be worth the listen. But it surprises me every time I see how popular true crime really is on podcasts.
I know, right? I think maybe there's some suppressed, I don't know, obsession. I don't know.
It's so true. It's so very true.
I don't have that. I'm very black and
white. Yeah. Well, starting a podcast as well, I have to say, you said you sat on it for 2 years. It is a real big uplift of work to start a podcast. I think a lot of people think, and you can just put a mic and you can just launch things, but even getting the platform set up and learning about all the individual pieces of the technology that come together and having a level of consistency once you actually launch as well. How did you navigate that space?
It was difficult. Again, I leaned on other people and networks and caught myself. It's kind of like how I leaned into entrepreneurship. I think it's the same thing. I take a variety of different sources, and I was, I knew a couple of people who were like good with videos or good with audio, so I asked them, and a couple of others that kind of doing podcasts, but nobody was doing it very well, and they were doing it in small scales. And I thought, okay, well, it's good to always get information, and then you watch a lot of YouTube as well, which is also what I did, because I learned from YouTube, listen to other podcasts too, to get learnings.
I was going to say, you're very visual too, by the sounds of it, in the sense that, especially with marketing background and communications, that visual sense of watching and learning.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, and I used to love reading when I was a child and teenager, but now I've actually shifted into watching and listening. I'm very what do you call it, auditory now, and visual too. So it's been tinkering in my head for 2 years, and I finally felt ready. And I think it's a choice you need to have, because I can still feel unready for a long time. I can still be sitting on it 5 years later. But I was like, okay, I need to stop and just do it. And gave myself a date. The date kept moving. And then I was like, right, what actually led me to finally do it was I said I was going to launch a live podcast as a kickoff, and I had no excuses then because the live podcast meant people were going to be there, and I cannot not be there. And I'm a person driven by deadlines, and nothing gets me more focused than a deadline. And so
can relate. So a live podcast for your first one, nothing like throwing yourself into the deep end as far as going, I'm going to do this in front of an audience. Where did you do that live podcast?
I did it at Western Sydney Uni, where I was, and they were very kind to kind of say, and we were kind of looking for an international women's event, and I'm like, well, my podcast is all about shining diversity. And again, I think it's all like, my background, my multicultural background, what I was teaching at Western Sydney Uni, that inclusiveness, that diversity. But I'm also very passionate about new emerging technologies as well, because, I've had, lived in Japan with the robots and the digital innovation, and I love all this new tech that's coming out. I think I'm a very, always like love talking about new tech and all the things that's happening and how that's going to change their lives and how people came through. And I'm also passionate about careers. Again, I'm a teacher. I love skills. And, there is also a deficit in terms of people entering these spaces so we can try and get more people into new emerging technology industries. So that's what my podcast is about. It's educational. It's about diversity, and it's about careers. And I'm calling it inspirational, I'm calling it educational, and it's called Emerging Tech Unpacked, because what I'm trying to do is unpack emerging tech topics and careers with diverse perspectives.
And would you say part of that is also simplifying it down for people to not see this scary world of technology, but how they can all utilize it in their day-to-day as well?
100%, because I see myself as someone who's, an educator. I used to teach English in Japan, where everything's, a lot more, you have to speak in very simple language. And technology is one of the most complex things to understand. Tell me what agentic AI is. Who bloody knows what quantum is? And, and these are the topics that I want to unpack, but in very easy to understand language so people understand it. And that's what the premise is as well, is that, I do think that these are the type of technology or science discoveries or deep tech that is going to impact our lives. And I feel like, how can I do it in a way that is sharing, but also in a way that is understandable? And I think the communication skills, back to that again, is to make it easy so people can understand and know how it's going to really impact their lives and their professional life as well.
I love how all your dots connect throughout your odyssey of everything from your degree of the communication to becoming a teacher to trusting the path to opening up your curiosity and asking some great questions, but heading on a journey which was in so many different industries, but, you really built the skill set there with product at the core, at the center of the heartbeat of all those different operations, and love that you are creating a platform for so many women to come on there and share their learnings as well. And I know recently you're partnering with the CSIRO and giving a platform for them to be able to share the incredible research that they're working on.
Yeah, so CSIRO actually came on as a sponsor, and because they also see that, they've got lots of incredible scientists who nobody has really heard of their discoveries before, and this, what I'm trying to do is to kind of like give a little bit of how do I say it? Give a little bit more information and promotion and love and light into all this incredible research and researchers and scientists. Other people can see what they're doing. And so, we're talking about topics like antimicrobial resistance, which is, what happens when your body is immune to antibiotics. 5 million people are dying from that every year already. It's going to get worse, as more people become immune to antibiotics. The amount of antibiotics I eat when I'm sick, I feel like I'm probably already halfway there. I'm scared. And so an interviewing style going, well, what is it, first and foremost? What is this topic? But then how would you come about in your career too? And so profiling the cool new technology, innovations, discoveries and research, and then talking about their career. And I think that's also why CSRO came on board as a sponsor, because they could see that, it is value to them because they get to profile their projects and their scientists and researchers. And it's also valuable for the general public, the general athletic public, to learn more about this incredible technology and research that, and these are founders. A lot of the people I'm also profiling are founders themselves. So they've done their chops as a scientist, and now they've commercialize their research, which is really bloody hard, because you've gone from science into kind of like a business next venture. And so as a result, they're also pivoting in their careers as well. And I love talking about career reinvention because that's me. I'm always reinventing careers. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what an incredible journey to actually go on and be on that path of reinventing throughout. But I love that. I love that you're giving that platform for them and that they're learning, you're learning. I think as part of this, like how you've evolved and now very heavy looking at the science side of it. And you can see that brings you such a great level of enthusiasm, passion. It is actually making a difference to you. And as you said, to all of your community and sharing that knowledge out there so more people can hear all about it.
Yeah, and I love learning. And, I've done so many different topics I knew nothing about. And as a result of this podcast, I was speaking to the general manager of Swimming Australia about Olympic swimming tech. Like, how do you get, Kyle Chalmers and Ariana Tipnis to swim faster in the Olympic pool? How do you, and then speaking to the head of generative AI at Canva all about an AI design, or speaking to ex-intelligence officers about deepfake technology and how that happens. And for me, I think is really interesting because I'm curious and moving, and I want to hear about their careers and how they got to where they are. But I also love hearing about all this cool new tech that's happening. So yeah, and you're right. It's all about me learning, but also sharing that knowledge as well.
In addition to recognizing others, how have you been recognized for your podcast?
Well, in 2025, I actually won the Women of Western Sydney Award in STEM category, which I think was, a great recognition. I was also the finalist in Communicating in AI Award. And I actually just got back from China because I won the Influence and Innovation Award in Beijing. And that was really thrilling because it's always incredible to do something and then be recognized for it. And I'm chuffed because my podcast is less than 2 years old and it's already resonating with quite a number of industry people. And so it's fantastic. The podcast also just went through a live podcast because we were one of 16 selected for the South by Southwest stage. And I was so pleased with that because I'm hoping to do more live podcasts because I love bringing communities together. And for me, that's one of the ways I can do that too. So yeah, really delighted I started this journey because I'm hoping to build this into another venture. And I can see that momentum is growing really, really fast.
Oh, huge congratulations. Honestly, from what you've started only so recently, really going into this podcast space and to where you are now being recognized on that global level with all of these key accolades, just a huge congratulations.
Oh, thanks, Kirsty. But, remember it's 2 years before that and then less than 2 years. So it's been 4 years in the making, overnight success over 4 years.
One to be super proud of.
Yeah.
Well, how can people get in contact with you? If they want to reach out to learn more about the podcast, they want to be able to reach out to understand more about how they can work with you or just to follow along on your journey.
Yeah, so emergingtechunpacked.com is the website of the podcast. So definitely go there. I also have a website as well, Lucy-Lin, LIN.com. And they're probably the two best ways of getting in contact with me and to work in terms of any collaborations in the future.
Amazing. Oh, I will be putting that in the show notes. But one thing before we start looking at wrapping up, we're coming close now, but what surprised you most about how you felt moving into a portfolio career?
I felt it's difficult moving into a portfolio career because you have to juggle so many hats. So in a portfolio career, and I think a lot of people think about portfolio career and what that means. but you're doing multiple little things at once, and that becomes like a big pie. And so for me, it's like a portfolio career is you're consulting and you've got a podcast or you have board advisory roles. And I'm the New South Wales vice chair of the Australian Computer Society. And you're speaking, about innovation and careers in tech, like what I am, or you're, potentially thinking about rolling out a course and, all these things. That's what a portfolio career is. Like when you're doing multiple little things that add up to a full-time job. And again, I think one thing that you have to know about that is you have to be very organized. And I do think that I'm fairly strong. I do have very strong organization skills. Like you have to, because you have to protect your time. And then you got to think, oh my God, what am I doing today? Because you've got all these different hats you got to wear. And then within that, there's all these different things you got to do as well. And so you just have to be very organized, very prioritized, like, knowing what you're going to do, how you can spend your time, who you're going to spend it with, what are you going to spend it on. And, but I do like it because I am a person who likes variety. And I think that's also why I'm in a portfolio career, because I do like variety and I do like that different variety and being organized and work with just lots of different people. I feel like if you're in a job, you're just working with the same people a lot, but if and you also get to choose who you work with, which I think is also exciting. But again, I would caveat that this is only good for people who are self-driven as well. So if you don't self-drive, you won't get anywhere, But if you are self-driven, it could be quite rewarding for you.
Yeah. And I listened, there was a post that you put on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, especially as we look at starting the new year, and spoke a little bit about the isolation publicly, which is great because it shows that vulnerability. It shows how real it is behind the scenes of some of this as well, especially as people are navigating, do I turn away from corporate after 20 plus years of corporate to go into this path? Can you open up a little bit about that and how you nurture yourself behind the scenes so that you can be the best version of yourself for everyone else?
Yeah, look, it's not easy to go in from any transitions whatsoever. But I'm a person who is incredibly adaptable. And I think I demonstrated that at 6 when we moved to Australia from Taiwan, and then at 21 when I moved from Australia to Japan, with no network and not knowing anything and, all of that. And I feel that being uncomfortable is something that I think is okay and that sits okay with me. It's not for everybody. Being isolated is also difficult because you're in a portfolio career now and, again, it's kind of something that you do yourself. So you rely on people like accountability buddies. So thank you so much, Kirsty, for being an accountability buddy, as we can talk about this, because it's always hard and you want to connect with other people who are in similar situations who can relate to what you talk about. Because I can talk to my corporate friends about this and they've got no idea what I'm talking about. But you talk to other people who are in the same situation and you can brainstorm and you can help each other and you can get over the isolation, the loneliness, the difficulties, all of these things. So I think it's really important to lean on your network and to really lean on people that you can trust and build good relationships. And I feel like, in my 20-something years degree, it's always about good communications and good relationships. And, that's something I think I will always take away with me. And for me, it's always about following my passions as well. I'm aligning my values to my passions. Doesn't always work out for everyone, and that's okay because I know I've been put back into something else that's a little bit more stable, but I'm a person who also follows my passions too.
Well, thank you for sharing so openly with our community around that, because it's a very real space. It's very real that we've all got different feelings and emotions that we go through in this journey. I love being each other's accountability partner, especially as we start into this new year. It's going to be a really fun journey. One key question I do have for you is, today it's all about your odyssey, but we haven't spoken about tech. If there was one question that both of our audiences would really want to understand about technology in 2026, is there a key question I should be asking you right now?
Key question about tech. I think it's to just not be afraid of all the changes. There's so many things that's coming and it's so fast and it's so quick, and don't be overwhelmed by it. And I feel like it's difficult, because there's so many, it's developing and evolving so quickly. Nobody can keep up, right? And I feel the overwhelm is real. And I feel that it's, I think you take it in stride. I think you need to take it into small chunks. And for me, it's like, that's what I'm trying to do. But also lean on your trusted sources, which is also what I'm trying to build with my podcast, is vet trusted sources so people can learn from, because there's a lot of fake news and crap on the internet. Let's just say that. And how do you know what's real and what's not and what to trust? And let's talk, I don't even want to talk about AI and, and that is going to be even more prevalent in our social medias and our feeds. And you just go, oh God, what's real, what's not, and what's the truth and what's not. Like, it's really, I think it's going to be even more hard moving forward. So I feel there's going to be so much that is going to happen because people are just going to be lazy and use AI and produce AI slop and have no vetting and just put it out there. So I think one of the skills to have is, one, don't be overwhelmed by it, but then two, think critically about what you're seeing, because, use your human brain to vet that if this is real or not, and don't be lazy to just use AI for the sake of, tweak it a little bit. And I never think that creativity is ever going to go away and communications is never going to go away either, because that's what makes us human. So I actually think in terms of communication and technology and AI and creativity and all that, I do think that humans will always win because we're always adapting, whereas, technology can be slower to that, and we'll always think outside the box and be faster at it and better at it always.
Great advice. So, yeah, I mean, I think about technology and I even think about how I closed out 2025 and that mental overload, it was real. Like, it was very real. And it was the first time I have felt that level of exhaustion where I just didn't want to look at another app. I didn't want to learn about anything else of AI. I didn't want to be, because I feel like productivity has actually doubled, tripled, quadrupled. We just keep putting more and more into our day. And it actually is taking a moment to just step back, delete a few apps and to clear our headspace, to come back to that human side and really understand how we're using all the different key elements out there in technology.
Yeah. And I do think that is a, instead of everything looking perfect, and I'm guilty of it, I'm a perfectionist. Now I think people also want to see, it's okay to be it's a bit, there's a few mistakes here and there, and there's like ums and ahs here and there, because, it shows that we're human and it's a little bit more authentic and relatable and real, rather than it being completely perfect, So I do think that is also a huge trend that's coming this year as well. And I'm going to be a lot more forgiving about that, because at least I know that someone's actually done it rather than being lazy and then, got AI to do it,
So true. So very true. Well, Lucy, I like to ask each of the guests on the show for a few words of wisdom that they can pass on to the aspiring leaders and founders of tomorrow. So what invaluable lesson have you gained that you would like to share?
I think for me, it's all about communications, right? And the ability to communicate properly. And I don't think you should ever underestimate your soft skills. It actually irks me that people think, soft skills, they're not as important as, say, hard skills, but it's completely not, because your soft skills is what is going to get you further, I think, in your relationships and in the workplace, because the ability to talk, even small talk, water cooler talk, chit-chat talk, is actually going to get you in better stead because you actually know someone properly. And, I did my communications degree. I didn't know what I wanted to do at the end of high school. I went overseas, but I knew I was curious. But I actually think the strong communication skills has been very beneficial to me. And the reason why it is because if you look at leadership, a leader turns ideas and intent into shared understanding, action, and trust. And without clear, consistent communication, I think even a very amazing, brilliant strategy is going to die because no one's going to understand it, or there's a lot of resistance to it because nobody understands it, or it just doesn't make sense. And I think that is because they haven't communicated that properly. And I do think that, leadership really lives in communications that it is designed so every message, you're building more trust or clarity, or you're eroding it. So for any of the emerging leaders of tomorrow, really, really hope you look at stronger communication skills. You can do this by working on your public speaking and feedback abilities. I did Toastmasters for years to kind of learn more about that, or your active listening skills, which I think is really important too. And I started improv a few years ago. I stopped and now I want to go back to it again because I think improv really improves your active listening skills. Like you got to act on the moment. They're fun, they're useful. And and I just think it's really important. And I keep thinking, maybe I need to put out a course about communications or all that too. So
I see something in the pipeline. Maybe it's all about putting a KPI to it, like you said, deadline. When is it going to show up in the world? Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for the openness, and thank you for the care that you bring to the work. Honestly, you've shared your story with so much depth, and not just what you have built, but how you've chosen to build it. And going through it, I can see that curiosity was sitting at the heart. You've absolutely got that level of clarity about the path forward, even though it will keep evolving over time. You very much keep people at the centre. So I'm very, very grateful for the lessons that you have shared with our community. So thank you for the conversation and being exactly who you are, Lucy.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. Thank you so much for joining me on this very special episode and for listening to my story. Thanks to Kirsty from the Leadership Odyssey podcast for a fantastic conversation, sharing the realities behind a polished LinkedIn profile, including my challenges, the risks, the redundancies, the pivots, and the experiments, deeply important to me because global careers are non-linear. If there's one thing to take away from this conversation, it's that curiosity, adaptability, and community can carry you through even the most uncertain of chapters. Your journey doesn't need to be a perfect resume to be meaningful. It just needs to feel aligned with your values and the kind of impact you want to have. If this episode resonated, it would mean so much to me if you can follow Emerging Tech Unpacked. Leave a 5-star review and share this with someone who might be standing at their own crossroads right now. That support helps more people to find my podcast and see what's possible in tech, in leadership, and entrepreneurship. It takes a lot of research, time, and effort to put a podcast together, and I would very much appreciate it if you can support our podcast with a donation so I can cover my podcast production expenses and keep this show and our important mission of providing quality education, promoting gender equality, and highlighting future skills and STEM career pathways going. We're always looking for sponsorship partnerships and guest speaking collaborations. Visit our website to speak with me directly on emergingtechunpacked.com. We are available on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and you can also watch us on YouTube where we have bonus video content. Make sure to tap that notification bell so you'll be informed of the latest episode drops. We're active on social media, so make sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on all our social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, to stay updated with the latest news and content. To get in contact with me, you can find me on LinkedIn by searching for Lucy Lin or on my website, lucy-lin.com. We welcome all feedback and will be very grateful if you can help us grow and spread the word by forwarding this episode to a friend and giving us a 5-star review. Before I go, ask yourself one simple question. What is one part of your journey that you're ready to reframe? From setback to stepping stone, starting today. I'd love to hear about it in the comment section. Until next time, keep following your curiosity, keep backing your ideas, and keep forging your own unique career odyssey. See you in the next episode soon.